Hey, it's Rachel Archelaus here. Thank you for watching. I'm here with my brand new friend, Jamie Saloff of SwanShaman.com. And we're just going to talk about, how being psychically open has influenced her life and her work, what work she's doing. We're going to talk about self-publishing and a cool place that I don't know much about called Lilydale. So stay tuned and, yeah, get in on the conversation. So hi. That was a
Hello.
little
Happy to
introduction.
be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Thank you. But so basically, you're a trained medium who writes a lot of books and works with people who have trouble with their messaging to kind of get the word out about what they do. Would that be a good summary? Add in where I've left out.
Okay, then where you've left out, let me think. Well, in regard to what I've been calling swan people, I definitely have been working with them and helping with their messaging, but it also goes a lot deeper than that. In that, um, the work that I do with them is also, I kind of want to say, it's like train the trainer kind of thing, because I find a lot of swans are already aware and already doing a lot of things, but they need help in areas like getting the word out. They have trouble sometimes communicating with others about their messaging and their marketing, getting themselves out that way. They sometimes need help with clearing out old baggage. They sometimes need to get past challenges in their lives, particularly health challenges and that sort of thing. So it kind of goes a lot deeper than that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's a good overview.
Cool. And who is a swan person?
That's why I have a swan quiz, because I found I guess I need to explain it a little bit like this, and that is it stems from the um, the Ugly Duckling story written by Hans Christian Andersen. And as I started utilizing that story in one of my first books, Transformational Healing, it started out to be an explanation in regards to perception and how perception, if you change your perception, that can change your life instantly. Because the interesting thing about the Ugly Duckling story is, even though it's a fairy tale, there's no magic in that story. This transformation of the ugly duckling to the swan happens, obviously it happens as a natural progression of life, but as a young swan, the ugly duckling didn't even know that that was possible. And I see that in people a lot. They see a lot of potential, and they see a lot of people that they look up to, and they don't realize that potential is in them. And so that's where that started. And as I started getting deeper into the story, I found 13 traits that I call swan traits. And so I started using those as tags to identify these swan people, or these people who have this huge potential inside them that's going unutilized in some cases. And it turns out that some of those traits are very common in a lot of us. So there's a lot of us out there that have this tremendous potential waiting to be tapped. And a couple of those traits include having an unusual or odd childhood, which that goes everywhere from, maybe having only one parent, or maybe there was a death in the family, or it could have been more traumatic or tragic, where it could have been an abuse situation, or that sort of thing. And it could be something that happened incidentally, where, I've heard people talk about, they were hospitalized for 2 weeks and separated from their parents. In the scope of a life, 2 weeks is a very small period, but yet that kind of set them up as being a little bit different, or having a little bit different perspective than other people. Swan people are often driven kind of people. They get really deep into something, and they can become really driven on finishing a project, or they may become really addicted to video games or that sort of thing. They may be addictive shoppers. So there's 13 of those traits, and you can take that quiz over at swanshaman.com and find out if you're a swan or not.
Cool. You also have a free ebook, right? about.
Right. And the ebook kind of just kind of expounds upon the quiz. Once you take the quiz and kind of start getting like an overview of that, then the little ebook kind of explains it a little bit deeper.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting. I can relate to those things that you're talking about, and also I see in people how they can't see themselves as the swan.
Right.
So that's
right.
the perfect metaphor. Do you have a swan story of your own?
I probably have several of them. I mean, what do they say? You teach what you need to learn. I think my favorite one probably is that one of my first mentors, it was a writing mentor, and I remember we would gather around his dining room table. There was like 6 of us, and it would be like a Thursday night, and he would encourage us on our writing, and pretty much we had one rule, and that was like we would read each other's stuff. We weren't allowed to criticize it. All we were really allowed to say is, how does it make you feel? And I would watch him as a speaker and as a teacher and a mentor, and I thought, wow, that's just really cool. And I can't even say at that time I wanted to be like him as much as I just admired the work he was doing and how much he really cared about helping people. And it took a lot of time to realize, oh my gosh, I can do this. And it was a series of, baby steps to go from, wow, what a great person, to, well, I can do that. So I think that's probably one of my bigger swan stories. And then, like another part of that is, I started out just kind of being a stay-at-home mom. I was, I talk about swans being really driven or addicted to something, and I was a coupon queen. So I had boxes and boxes of coupons and this great big list of people that I sent coupons back and forth to. This was pre-internet days, so it was all done, with, like, you had like a little magazine that you looked through and you found friends in that. And from doing that, it was like I looked in the mirror one morning and I was like, what am I doing with my life? What am I going to be, the coupon queen for the rest of my life? It was like, I need to like do something with my life, and I have since then. Since that time, I've written 6 books. I've done a lot of things. I don't want to sit here and bore you with all the different things I've done, but it really, like when I talk about the potential inside of us, it's like something inside of me broke open and exploded, and I've just tried and done so many wonderful, cool things since then that I'm no longer a stay-at-home mom in that respect, but I still, even though I have my own business and I'm a home-based business, I don't think of myself in the same light as I did in those days, where it was like, well, I'll throw on a sweatshirt and some sweatpants and I won't care how I look, and I'll just sit here and cut out coupons all day.
Yeah.
I saved a lot of money at that. But
oh, yeah. Well, what I really love is like, is in with the ugly duckling. Maybe the ugly duckling, when it was growing up, didn't feel so good about itself and, wanted to be the beautiful swan. But when we're the swan, when we're in that role, we look back and it doesn't invalidate the ugly duckling. The ugly duckling was beautiful and perfect just as it was. So all of our like before times, right? They're perfect. It's what we needed. It was amazing. So coupon queen was just what you were supposed to be doing in the moment. That's cool. So where does the mediumship come in? So were you always open and sensing things as a child, or did that come later on in life?
Yes and no. It was interesting because where I live an hour from Lilydale now. I didn't as a child, but I do now. And people would always say, in our area, there's 2 kinds of people. And there's the people that are like, don't ever go there. And then there's the other people who are like, oh, you have to go.
Yeah.
And the first time I went, I had waited years and years. And the first time I went was about 2006, 2005, 2006, around then. And I'd never been before. And I had a reading, and the woman told me that she's like, you have never shut it off. You have always been open. And I'm like, I have. And I think it's because, and you mentioned this before we started recording, that some people are just, it's just so natural to what we are and what we do that you don't really think about it. It's not like you're sitting there and analyzing every little aspect of it. It's just part of who you are. And because it had been part of who I was, I had never really thought of myself as being like that. And when I ended up going to ministry school to learn more about how to be a better healer, a better medium, that was an intensive 2-year program. And I didn't go there to be a medium. I actually went because I wanted to be a better healer, and I wanted to get more credentials to promote my transformational healing book. Because I felt like the transformational healing book was about, what I want to say is word knowledge. I mean, it's like I gave people methods and techniques on how to transform their life, become that swan. But yet I felt like there's some people who really needed somebody that could lay hands on them or help them in the moment, because sometimes what you need more than anything is to just get past that challenge or that bump in the road. And sometimes you need more than just some words in a book. Sometimes you really need somebody that can make a difference in your life right then and there. So I really went for that reason, and then it didn't turn out exactly how I thought. I mean, after the 2 years, I realized, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this. This mediumship thing, and I certainly would not. I don't put myself up there with some of the great names that we have known and that are before us. I enjoy training under some of them, and I've trained under Lisa Williams. There's a fellow by the name of Bill Collier who is just tremendous. I mean, what he can do on the other side of the veil just amazes me. But then I find I also amaze myself sometimes at what comes through. And I think that's what keeps me going, is just when you have that interaction and you can help somebody and you can bring through something from the other side that in that moment heals them or transforms them or makes them feel better. That's what keeps me doing it, I think, more than anything.
Awesome.
I don't know if I got totally off track with that, but
that's okay.
Started like on road A and ended up on road C. So
yeah, well, I just want to follow up a little and ask you about. Can you tell us what Lilydale is?
Lilydale is
a pretty special place, right?
Oh my goodness. It is a tremendous, tremendous place. Now, some people may have heard of the Chautauqua Institution, which is in Chautauqua, New York. And it's a gated community. Past presidents have been there. And it was built in the 1800s, and it's on a nice little lake. And not far from there is Lilydale. Well, Lilydale was created by spiritualists, and it's also a gated community. At one time, there was about 200 homes there. I think there's about half of that now. I can't remember what the exact count is. But to kind of give you an overview of it, you come upon this gate, and there's like a little hut, and you pay a gate fee to go in during season, which is near the end of June to Labor Day, I believe. The rest of the time you can just go in, but a lot of the mediums don't stay there year round. It's in a snow belt, so it can get really, winter can be an adventure. So a lot of them go south or go somewhere else for the winter, but there are some who are there year round, and they have between 70, well, I don't know if they have 70 now, but there's approximately 70 registered mediums that live or work on the grounds, and these people are certified by the Lilydale Assembly. They have to take strict testing to prove that they are as good as they say they are, and then they are certified and they can hang out a shingle. Without that certification, they can still live there, but they can't hang out a shingle. And then what happens is you go through this gate, and as soon as you go through this gate, you feel this tremendous energy. I mean, you just sense that this love and this healing energy and this spiritual energy has been there for years and years and years. And as you come in, you see the main part of the village is there before you. And then as you look up the hill, you see that there's houses tucked up in the hill, and most of them are like little gingerbread Victorian style houses and cottages. And all of the yards are filled with angels and globes and flowers and other symbols that you would expect to see from spiritually minded people. Every house is unique and different, and speaking of their beliefs and their faith. And then my favorite part is that you go back into the woods, and one of the coolest things, of course, to do is to go back into the woods on the night of the full moon on Halloween, which I have done. But you go back to the woods, and this woods has stood there since the 1800s or before, and you walk through these tall trees, and you go back deeper and deeper, and you just kind of feel these trees enveloping you and protecting you. And as you come to a clearing, there's these hand-wrought benches there. And then the mediums, it started out, the teenagers used to go back there to practice, and they would stand on this stump of this tree that was known for its healing properties. And apparently at some point the parents discovered this, and they kind of kicked out the teenagers and they started doing it. But now it's become a tradition where several times a day people work their way back through there, and they sit in the benches, and the mediums go up to the front. They no longer stand on the stump. The stump has degraded over the years, so they stand in front of it. And they just give random readings, or you might even call them greetings, because they're usually quite short, but they're just what they call a demonstration or a dem of their abilities. And then that gives people the idea of, oh, that one was really good. I want to go have a real reading with that medium kind of thing. So that's why they do it. And then they also there's like a fairy forest there, and there's a pet cemetery, there's healing temples, and then it's a whole community. So there's a fire station, there's shops, there's restaurants, there's hotels, there's bed and breakfast. There's a whole community there. And they also have a huge auditorium where some of the top speakers of the country and the world go there and speak during season. So,
wow, that's pretty amazing.
It is amazing.
I can't believe I didn't go there when I still lived in Connecticut.
You can go there from anywhere, and I recommend to stay at least a weekend if you can. Most of the bed and breakfasts require you to stay at least 2 nights. Mm-hmm. Typically, if you want to spend the night there, you have to book in March for season, because it's booked solid after that. Mm-hmm. Although there are a couple of bed and breakfasts in around the region, mm-hmm. and a couple of hotels. But it's of course the best is to stay right on the grounds and to just soak it all in and be a part of the culture there. You can be, the cool thing is you can be anybody or anything there. I mean, nobody thinks you're weird if you have different color hair, or if you can be into UFOs. You can be into paganism, or you see the gamut from, even Christian faith to the spiritualism there. I mean, it's all different kinds of people, and nobody really points a finger at anybody else and says you have to believe this or you have to believe that. It's just very open there.
That's
and
cool.
Like I said, I spent 2 years training up there, so I spent a lot of time up there during that, and you kind of leave a piece of your heart up there when you go.
Wow, very special place.
Absolutely.
And you don't find that kind of tolerance everywhere. There are a lot of spiritual communities who aren't so open, and accepting of other people and other views. Absolutely. So that sounds really great.
And honestly, you want to think of it like as a perfect world. It really isn't. I mean, there's still different views and mm-hmm. people who still bang heads there, but it's just a wonderful atmosphere overall. So.
Cool. So you may not know the answer to this because, like you mentioned earlier, it's just a part of who you are. But Do you think that being psychic has influenced the way you look at business and life?
It has to have. Because I spend a lot of time wondering, is this the right direction for me? And I I tend to spend a lot of time with decisions, maybe more time than I should on some decisions, and I'll do everything from maybe pulling a card to, how do I feel about this? Or, sometimes I drive my husband crazy because I be like, just make a decision.
Yeah.
But I really am aware of wanting to be on the right path and wanting to, and yet on the same respect, I feel like you can't really make a mistake. I feel like we're climbing a mountaintop and maybe there's 5 ways to get to the mountaintop, so it maybe doesn't matter which road we take, but I always like to hope and think that I'm taking the fastest, easiest way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always think I've chosen that way, but I remember I had a vision one time and it was like, okay, you have this challenge you're facing, and I had 2 choices. It was like you had to traverse this crevice, this huge mountainous crevice. And it was like, okay, so you can climb down the one face of the mountain, cross the river, and climb up the other face of the mountain, or you can cross this rickety, board missing, hanging bridge. Which do you want to do? And I'm like, I'm for the bridge. Because it just seemed like, even though it was maybe a little more frightening, it seemed to me like it would be the fastest way, and maybe the easiest way, even though it might be a little scary, So I've always been one to kind of like choose that over. I don't want to be in pain. I don't want to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
I've had my share of that. So.
And is there a knowing that goes along with that, of like, even if you dropped, you'd be okay?
I haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
I think for me, the knowing is when things start hooking up synchronistically,
Mm-hmm.
And all the doors are wide open and the right people come forward, and then you're like, yeah, I'm on the right track. And then, when you face those bumps in the road or the challenges, then you're like, okay, do I need to change something, or is something shifting? Do I need to rethink something? Because things are not going as smoothly as I would like right now.
So the norm is, or the feedback you get from the universe is normally like when you're in your groove, things just kind of come to you and things are easier. And then sometimes when you're off track and there's a bumpy road, sometimes it's for a reason. Sometimes things are realigning, but then if it keeps going on, you're like, to question, did I take a wrong turn somewhere?
Well, and the famous one, I think, is the fly beating himself against the window when the door is open just a few feet away. And so a lot of times, I am really stubborn and persistent, and I will work through something sometimes maybe longer than a typical person would. But, there comes a time when you go, okay, I've given this my all, and it's still not happening. So, okay, I'm ready to turn and go the other direction and see if, it'll work out better that way. Yeah. And I don't think there's any really dead ends. A lot of times people will talk about, oh, I got in this dead end job or dead end relationship or whatever. And I think, no, like you're saying, I think there was some piece of that we needed to learn, some piece that we're going to need later, or we needed to meet somebody that we were influenced by or inspired by. So I don't really think that there's any dead ends per se.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So you have a book out about self-publishing.
I do.
And you've published your books through that avenue as well?
I just happen to have one of them.
Oh, perfect.
I don't know if I can make it. You'll have to tell me if it's got too much glare on it.
Nope, I think we got it. So can you tell us about that and about, how you help people through that?
This book is 7 Easy Steps to Professionally Self-Publish Your Book Using Lightning Source or Ingram Spark. And it's based on the 15 to 16 years that I've worked with people, designing books and helping them traverse the self-publishing thing. I got involved in print-on-demand publishing when it first came on the scene. And that was one of those things where I had been building websites back in the early 1996, 97. It was like the internet was a brand new thing, and wow, I had a website, and it was like purple background with like bright yellow text, and it was so cool.
Yeah, I remember those days.
I have a website. My modem was like attached to my computer as a separate thing with like wires everywhere, you know.
Yep.
And
do you miss that sound? I do. I don't think the kids nowadays know what that sound is like.
No. The fax sound. No. Like Grumpy Cat. No. I have come to several places in my business where I started feeling uncomfortable, and I started realizing, like the fly hitting the window, and that was one of them. I realized I really enjoyed building websites, but not for others. And I knew it was time to move forward, and I was working on a website for one of my clients, and I said, you're doing these classes, and you run down to the local copy shop, and you print these books. It costs you an arm and a leg, and I'm like, you should be doing this print-on-demand thing. And so he let me give it a go, and when I go back and look at that first book that I designed and put together, I kind of laugh because there was a lot of newbie mistakes in it. But for the last 15 years or so, then that's what I've done. People connect with me who have written books, and either they don't know how to do the technical aspects and they need someone to help them through that, or maybe they're just not sure of which is the right path for them. Should I go traditional? Should I get an agent, or should I self-publish? I don't know which is the way to go. And now, of course, we have ebooks, which have just exploded. So, a lot of times it's just an information thing. They need somebody they can trust, somebody who will give them quality information, because there's so much conflicting information out on the internet. How do you know what's right? And how do you know what's right for you? Because I think of every book, even if an author has multiple books, I think of every book as a unique to them and unique product. And what's right, if say like you have 3 different books you're working on, it may be right to take one to ebook. It may be right to take another to traditional publishing, and it may be right for another one to be a print book. Each one is different depending on who you are as a person, what the book is supposed to do. There's just many, many aspects of that. In fact, a good friend of mine, Pat Matson, and I have joined together to help people with this Jumpstart program, and that's one of the things that we do is help them start writing a book, and then just help them get quality information about what's the right direction for me. So,
that's great.
But anyway, this book is mostly about if you're going to go the print market way, and you're going to go print on demand. This is my contribution from my 15 years of experience. And the thing that I want to kind of put out there is that this book took me 3 weeks to put together from start to published. And the reason that it was so quick was I used a lot of information that I had gathered over the last 15 years, and I just needed to put that into book form and then take it to publishing. And I want to put that out there because there's a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of spiritual people who feel like writing a book has to be a 15-year adventure, like my other book, this one. This is my transformational healing book. I don't know if you can see that one or not.
It's a beautiful cover.
That book took me 15 years to write, and the reason that it did was because I needed to learn so many things about myself in order to write it, but I also needed to learn the process. It was just such a ongoing, long-term thing. And so a lot of times I think especially as spiritually minded people, we think, oh, I have to put everything I know in this one book, and I'm not going to get started because it's just going to be such a long process. So I like to put out there that it doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little deeper about this, because I think nowadays most people will go to CreateSpace, which is Amazon's self-publishing platform. But Ingram's, I'm not familiar with theirs, but they're the ones who do most of the distribution in books, right?
Correct.
So tell me about that program, and what do you recommend people start with?
A lot of it depends on, again, what you're doing with your books. For a lot of my friends, I tell them, if they're not doing live workshops, that to go ebook and Kindle is a good way to start. You kind of get yourself out there, see what kind of feedback you get. It's a very inexpensive way to put your toe in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're doing live workshops, you pretty much have to have a physical book, because and a physical book, I think, has an essence that goes with it. I'm published. Here it is.
Yeah.
Right here in my hand. So I think that a lot of people want that print book because it's something physical that they can see, that they actually, it's harder to hold up like a little electronic device and go, here's my book, see? And you're like, where? You mean in those little bits of zeros and ones? It's not the same. It doesn't carry the same prestige with it. So I, of course, am partial to Ingram Spark and Lightning Source, because that's how I got my start.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think of a way to give you a short answer for a long question. I mean, how do I squeeze it down and give you just the gist of it? Because really, Lightning Source is the source, is what I want to say about that. And as far as quality goes, they're probably the best for print on demand, unless you're doing like a coffee table kind of book or like a lot of colored photos.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, Ingram is I always call it Pop Ingram. If you are ordering physical books, it probably at some point went through Ingram. The best explanation I heard of that the other day was because if I'm a bookstore, I don't want to have to deal with thousands and thousands of different little publishers and write checks to all of those people and have all of those people shipping to me. So I just go to Ingram, and there's others, but Ingram's the biggest. And, I get my deliveries every few days, and whatever I need, it's there, and it's one billing. And so that's how that came about. And then they wanted to help their, the traditional publishers be able to quickly produce their backlists and, those books that, are maybe not selling on bestseller level, but, needed a way to be out there still.
Right.
So that's how Lightning Source came about. Well, when Lightning Source came about, a lot of mom and pop publishers realized, hey, I can do this. And so suddenly there was this huge influx of small, what I call micro publishers. Some people refer to them as indie publishers. Maybe they only have one book. A small publisher would be an actual publisher who has a stable of authors under them. So anybody that's just publishing for themselves, like I call them micro publishers or mom and pop publishers, there was this huge influx. And I think at first Lightning Source was surprised by that, and then they realized, okay, we do this too. And then at some point they realized, this isn't really what we started out to do, and these people require a different kind of information and a different kind of hand-holding than we really got in business to do. So they created Ingram Spark, and Ingram Spark came online about last November. And they did some things with Ingram Spark that I didn't really like, but they also did some things really well. For one thing, it's highly automated, like CreateSpace. The biggest thing with them was they kept their discount the same as CreateSpace, and that meant that you didn't make as much money. Whereas with Lightning Source, you could set your retail discount at whatever you wanted, with the minimum of 20%. So you could, as a micro publisher, you could put more money in your pocket, almost 50 to 60% of the cover price went in your pocket. So it was difficult to recommend people to Ingram Spark, and so a lot of people then started going to CreateSpace. Well, from what I've heard, and I haven't even verified this yet because it just came down the pike in the last week, was that Ingram Spark said, maybe we ought to let people have their own discount. So what I'm hearing is we can set our own discount, and with that, then I like Ingram Spark over CreateSpace because you get more money in your pocket, you get a better quality product, and I'm seeing that as far as getting your books out there and online, they can do it really fast on the Spark arm, and you can't get into Lightning Source anymore as a micro or ma and pa because they've kind of shut the door to that end, and they're keeping that with the smaller and larger publishers on that side of things. So I'm not sure if that answered the question or not, but
no, it does. Yeah, I mean, better quality, fast, and now probably you can set your own discount with Ingram, and in CreateSpace, still a great platform, but you find the quality a little bit less.
The thing with CreateSpace is there's three things that I always bring up with them. Number one is they don't always use the same printer. They have several different printing facilities. So because of that, you may not get the same quality every time. And also, it affects the shipping time so that you're not always sure when you go and place that order. Now, with this being the holidays, no matter where you're shipping to, things are kind of slowing down because everything is slower at this time of year. But with CreateSpace, I find that sometimes they'll ship it off to you in 2 or 3 days, and sometimes it's two weeks. And if you're doing a workshop somewhere, you want to know that your books are going to be coming on a timely basis. And the beauty of print on demand is that you don't have cases and cases of books sitting in your garage or your basement or your back room. So, the ability to be able to purchase and get them to you on a timely basis is important. And also with CreateSpace, if you're going to end up using, if you want it to be available for order for bookstores and you want it to be available on places other than Amazon, like you said, you're going to end up going through Ingram anyway. It's just kind of, I want to say it's clandestine that you don't know, but it's pretty much out there on the street that, it goes through Ingram. So if you're going to go through Ingram anyway, why pay a fee to do that? Just go, right straight to them to start with. But there's some aspects of CreateSpace that are better for a first-time publisher. The fees are a little bit less to get in. You don't have to have your own ISBN. You can buy one through them. That makes CreateSpace your publisher, which is okay if you've only got 1 or 2 books that you're doing for yourself. If you're trying to put yourself out there as a professional, which particularly for spiritually minded entrepreneurs, that kind of thing, where they want to look like, hey, I know what I'm doing and I'm a professional. They probably want to have their own imprint or their own publishing company type setup and should have their own ISBN. But those extra costs might mean the difference between them being able to publish and not. So
So
on the plus side of things, CreateSpace helps with that.
I don't think most people would know what that means. So can you show on the side of your book what your imprint is and explain the difference between having that and then publishing as CreateSpace?
Okay. Tell me if you can see. Oops.
You lift it up. Yep. There we go.
Now, can you see the praying mantis?
Yep.
Is my logo.
So that means that Jamie has registered as that. She's gotten her own ISBN, which is that 978 number on the back of the book, and on the inside, it's like how they.
Well, and there's 2 ways to go about this because, for example, I work with a lot of chiropractors, and so they have their own chiropractic company already set up, and so maybe when they write their book, they don't want it to say Joe's Chiropractic on their book cover. But that's where all their money is going to channel into. So their company may still be Joe's Chiropractic, and that's how all their taxes are filed, etc. But then on their book, maybe they want it to be Heart Mind Press or something like that. So that becomes an imprint. And an imprint, you don't have to do a technical filing for, but you do have to make sure that nobody else is using that. I mean, you don't want to infringe on somebody's copyright kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it goes out onto like CreateSpace or on Amazon, when you see the publisher, you'll see that imprint name. Instead of Joe's Chiropractic, you'll see your imprint. Mine is Sent Books, S-E-N-T, Sent Books, like I was sent.
Nice.
And because at the time that I was publishing, and this is something I recommend as well, is that my company name was Saloff Enterprises. Well, if I put Saloff Enterprises in my book, then people would know right away, oh, well, she self-published that.
Mm-hmm.
And even though self-publishing doesn't carry as much of a stigmatism as it used to, back when I was first publishing, it really did. And so you wanted to look professional, and you didn't want your name as a publishing company. So an imprint is a way to get around that. And that is, if you do decide that you're going to buy your own ISBNs, I recommend that you, number one, you go right to RR Boker, or it's myidentifiers.com, and buy 10. Maybe buy 10 or more, because it's real tempting to say, oh, I only need one, but really you don't, because if there's a print book, and then there's probably an ebook, and maybe down the road you're going to have maybe you're going to have a hardbound book, or maybe you're going to have the workbook, or so buy 10. It's a lot cheaper in the long run. When you're looking at I think it's $275, $295 around there to buy 10, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, but compare that to $150 for one.
Yeah.
And you don't want to buy one, like a lot of companies will say, oh, buy our ISBN, and you can get it for like $10 or something like that. But what you're really doing is saying that you're buying it when they become your publisher per se, as far as the ISBN is concerned. And this comes down to semantics. When, say, I'm somebody and I want to put your books in my store, maybe I have a little new age shop or something, and I'm like, oh, I just saw this book and I want to buy them, and maybe I'm not buying through Ingram. How do I find you? Well, I can go to our broker and I can look you up. But if you're registered under somebody else's publishing company, then I'm going to be contacting them, not you. So that's another reason to have your own ISBN.
Yeah. I love this conversation. I didn't know it would go here, but
I did not either.
Yeah, well, I'm a micro press myself and have published other people under it. And so this is a great conversation I've never had with anyone. And a lot of people just don't know these things,
That's right.
So this has been very helpful.
Great.
Awesome. What would you say to people in wrapping up who feel like they're a swan person, who feel that potential, but they just don't know how to get there? Like, what's your word of advice?
I always say to think about what your big goal is, and then, I always think of it as a mountain climb, as I said before. So, okay, up here is where I want to be, but, I don't know how I'm going to get there. Okay, but you start with, what's the first step? Take that first step, and it always starts, I think, with a heart calling. That first step is always something deep down inside nagging you and going, you want to write that book, or you want to start that charitable organization, or you really need to dance, whatever. I always say it's like a 2-word thing a lot of times, to teach, to draw, to paint, to write. And then from there comes kind of like a layering or a skin on that. Like, I know I want to write books on healing, or I know I want to paint psychedelic prints about nature, or you have like this layer that goes on that. So what's the first step of that? And when you're climbing a mountain, you say to yourself, okay, I'm going to climb Everest, and I don't know how I'm going to get up there, but I do know that I probably need a guide, and I probably need a base camp, and I probably need some equipment and tools. So you start with that, and you're like, okay, what do I need for my base camp? And what's the first steps to get to that? Once you get to the base camp, then the next step will come to you. I mean, you'll know, okay, now the path is before me. And I feel like the guidance comes with each step. It's like there's a part of us that wants to know, just send me the AAA triptych that tells me the whole directions and how I'm going to get from step A to step B, and it's all going to be in one nice little packet. And the universe says, no, it doesn't really work that way. We're going to give you like kind of like a vision of where you want to go, and then we're just going to give it to you, a couple of steps at a time. Because each step you take, that opens up new learning, new avenues, new choices that are available to you. And so I don't think they can give it to us all at once, because whatever choices we make on step one, that changes what step two is going to be, even though it's the same destination. So that's my advice.
Very well said. Yep. Awesome. So, Swan people, if you're feeling like Jamie, go to her website, swanshaman.com. She has lots of resources for you. Her quiz, her ebook, her real books, her consulting. She does a lot of great stuff. So, thank you so much for this time. I think this is just so valuable for people to hear, and definitely, if you're thinking about self-publishing, check out Jamie's resources. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it very much.
Great. All right. I'll see you on the internet.
Alrighty.
Bye.